Hello, everybody, and welcome in Beacon Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I'm Nick Bate. He's Ricardo Martinez-Paz. The draft has come and gone, and we are here breaking down the selections for the Steelers and the Eagles. Man, Ricardo, I just kind of said this to you kind of right as we were getting into the episode, dude. I am fired up about this Steelers draft class. The Eagles also had a good draft, man. We're going to get into it. We've got some fun, exciting picks to break down that are going to be playing for these two teams next year. Before we do any of that, I ask you, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm pretty good, man. My off day after 7 straight days of work, feeling pretty good. But, the draft, yeah, man, it was for our teams unreal. Just so unreal, man. How are you doing, though?
Unreal, man. I'm doing good, doing very well. Got a beautiful day here today, so we're talking some Steelers, and I'll probably enjoy the weather, Steelers and Eagles, and then I'll enjoy the weather a little bit after that, man. But dude, not only we're gonna talk about how excited we are both about these two draft classes, but many experts out there are saying that the Steelers and Eagles are two of the teams that absolutely won the draft. So we are feeling fantastic about that, man. And it's like, you expect that from Howie Roseman, and this is now, again, the second year in a row that Omar Khan, you got to see how it plays out on the field, but, it seems like he's put together, two opportunities at the draft and two really good classes that are kind of quickly reshaping this Steelers roster as it continues to rebuild here. So I am definitely amped up, and I'm ready to start talking about some of these picks.
Yeah, dude, let's just dive right into it.
All right, so how do we want to do it? Should we go round by round for the first 3 rounds? Or should we go team by team? I think we should just kind of go back and forth with the picks round by round.
Yeah,
kind of keep things mixed up between both teams. So let's do that. And, the Steelers were the first team on the clock. Interestingly enough, going into the draft night, both the Steelers and Eagles were rumored to be looking to potentially trade up. Neither team does that. Both teams stay pat. Then there was some rumors the Steelers might be looking to trade back, but Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan were both kind of saying, I think Khan said, you don't trade away from talented players. And Mike Tomlin said they were not moving off of the player that they chose, and that was Troy Fautanu out of Washington, offensive lineman. I really like this pick sitting here, a couple days removed from the draft. I will say when it first happened, it didn't blow me over the moon. I was very happy that they went offensive line, but there was part of me that, leading up to the draft, I'd done a lot of research, a lot of reading, and a lot of people seem to think that maybe Fautanu is best suited for guard, but it sounds like the Steelers drafted him to play tackle. And, I wanted O-line. I wanted the Steelers to go offensive line in the first 2 rounds, which they did. My ideal pick was Amarius Mims. We talked about that in the last episode. He got taken and went to the Bengals, so it'll kind of be fun to compare the careers of Mims and Fautanu going forward. Both guys picked very close together in the first round. But, I'm hearing a lot of stuff about Fautanu, and I'm reading a lot since he's been selected. And, I love the fact that he has versatility. And he even said in his introductory press conference that at Washington, they practice a lot of playing on both sides of the line and all different kind of positions. But, I guess the best attribute that he has, why I think he will be able to, potentially stick at tackle in the NFL, is the fact that everybody says his technique is potentially the best of any offensive lineman taken in the first round. He is a full-on technician at the offensive tackle position. And I guess really some of the more critiques are maybe he's a little bit undersized, but I don't even really know how much of that is true when I kind of did some research on his measurables. So overall, the pick has really grown on me. I like him a lot. I guess I'll say real quick, the critique on his size. So he was listed this season by the Washington Athletics, the Washington Athletic website as being 6'4", 295 pounds, which is a little bit light for an offensive tackle. NFL.com, after the combine, got him in at 6'4", 317. Compare that to Broderick Jones, who's 6'5", 311. So he's actually a little bit bigger than Broderick Jones as far as weight goes. And he said that he kind of models his game after Rashawn Slater. Rashawn Slater is 6'4", 315 pounds. So he's got the size to be a tackle. He's got long enough arms to be a tackle. He's got great technique, which as long as that can translate to the NFL, I don't see any reason why he can't be a tackle for this team next season.
Yeah, that pick, I think I was reading stuff where maybe he kind of slid a little bit because of prior injury history, but like still, this is a guy who's, I mean, you laid it all out, but he's also just very athletic. I think the
Yeah.
most, like one of the top three most athletic offensive linemen in this class. And sticking and picking with him, not even having to trade up really. I mean, I mean, really perfect just how it fell that way. And I know you're going to get into this about the whole Steelers thing, like his fandom, but the
Yeah.
one thing I want to say too is he won the Morris Trophy, which is given to the best offensive lineman / defensive lineman in the Pac-12. So that's pretty telling too, that over, through all these defensive and offensive linemen, he was the best one, voted the best one. Like that's, I mean, that's pretty telling too. But yeah, I think this is, again, you dress a need. He's got, I mean, pretty good potential. He's going to start right away. Like he's going to be an impact player right off the bat. And yeah, I mean, this is just a home run pick for the Steelers. Like it's just, I have really no critiques about it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll get into the the Steelers connection in a second, but I guess my other kind of point with it too is it's like, look, he's gonna get a shot to start right away in the NFL at tackle. It's gonna be interesting to see whether, because he played left tackle in college, and obviously you drafted Broderick Jones last year to be a left tackle, but he played on the right side last year, so it'll be interesting to see what that dynamic kind of is, who they end up, kind of giving the shot, the more of the opportunity at left tackle, but. It's tough to speculate on that too much right now. But, overall, I am extremely pleased with it. And, if he gets a shot to play tackle this year and, let's say it doesn't go well, or maybe the Steelers realize, hey, he's more built for guard. I mean, James Daniels and Nate Herbig are both free agents after this season. So there could potentially be an opening at right guard come next season too. And Isaac Seumalo is also kind of more of a right guard and moved over to left guard. So you could also conceivably just move him inside to left guard and then move Seumalo back to right guard next year. Obviously, this is going way down the line, but obviously the hope is that he, projects as a tackle and he's able to be a tackle for the Steelers team for a long time. So I'm extremely happy with the pick, and it's just continued to grow on me more and more. And then we get into the fact that he grew up a Steelers fan, and you saw how emotional he was when he got drafted. And just, he said it was just an honor for him to even get a top 30 visit from the Steelers and then to be drafted by them. I mean, you just love seeing stories like that in the draft. He said he grew up a big Troy Polamalu fan, which is awesome because he's my favorite Steelers player of all time. Yeah, man. And I mean, he just, he talked to, I listened to his introductory press conference this morning. He loved the Steelers kind of brand of football. And one thing that he brought up is, he plays, these are two quotes from him. He plays with a mentality of wanting to hit someone in the mouth. And then, so that was a quote that he said in his introductory press conference. And you could tell how happy he was to just be there in Pittsburgh. And then Dane Brugler, the draft expert for The Athletic, in his like kind of write up about him, one of the lines he said about him is that he played with a touch of insanity. So I just absolutely love that for the Steelers and what they're trying to build on their offensive line. And Ricardo, we've been doing this podcast now. We're going to be going into our third season here. You know how adamant I've been about rebuilding this offensive line really since we started, and the Steelers have continued to do it. And Omar Khan has put such an emphasis, kind of like what Howie Roseman does of building through the trenches. Khan has done a lot of that too. And I mean, this draft will continue to talk about it with some other prospects that the Steelers picked. But like this pick, I just love it. And I think Fautanu is going to fit in Pittsburgh no matter what position it is along the offensive line. Home run pick. I love it.
Yeah, no, that little note about him being a Steelers, that's so like, that's like rare. That's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you be a fan of this one team, but you end up getting drafted by another. But like to see that, like his fandom and him getting drafted by the team he loved growing up is like, it's just, no, that's awesome to see. But I mean, yeah, the Steelers got a really good player. Someone, I mean, high motor, but the insanity parts, that's actually like, that's what they need. Like they kind of need a mauler. Yeah. Like they need that kind of edge to them, like on the offensive line. Obviously, athleticism, that's way better than most of the offensive line. But still, it's just like it just checks so many boxes and adds a little bit of character to the offensive line.
Yeah, athleticism and insanity are two things that I'm glad he brings to the table. So that'll be great. And I'll definitely, I'm excited to see him in once we get going into OTAs and rookie mini camps, so I'm excited to see him get out on the field, man, for sure. So
Yeah,
the Steelers were able to hold pat at 20 and select him. And another team, the Eagles, that also stood pat at 22 overall. Ricardo, could you have asked for a better situation for Philadelphia?
No, dude. The way it played out with all the quarterbacks and offensive players being drafted in the first 14 picks in a row or something like that. Like that was, I mean, it just couldn't have fallen any better for the Eagles because they had the pick. I mean, they had the corner of their choice, really. It just, they still had Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins was still available. Those two I mentioned in the prior episode, but the guy they ended up drafting, Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo, he actually like grew on me a lot going into the draft. But I mean, I'm really excited that they got him. And this is the first time since 2002. I'm sure this has been said multiple times, but since 2002 that the Eagles have drafted a corner in the first round. And man, it was just the way it shook out. It was just like between really any of those three players that I just mentioned, I would have been content with. But Howie Roseman just felt like like Quinyon Mitchell had a bit more potential, maybe a higher ceiling than Arnold. And there was also a connection. Nick Sirianni actually coached with some of the Toledo coaches at the University of Mount Union way back, like years ago.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't know that until I read about it. I was like, okay, that's a very like deep cut. Like, didn't know that definitely had something to do with this. But Vic Fangio, also a big fan of his. I mean, the dude is he gets his hands on the ball. He might not exactly get the most interceptions, but like he's always like deflecting passes. Like he had 37 passes defense in 2 seasons, which is kind of an absurd number. And I mean, yeah, you can say what you want about, he played in the MAC, not the 1A, not 2As.
Yeah, not our MAC that we're used
to.
Yeah,
not
the double A MAC. Yeah, the single A MAC.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it wasn't like the highest level, so to speak, but in the senior, what's it called? The senior bowl is what they do, right?
Senior bowl, yeah.
Yeah. And that's when Quinyon Mitchell really stood out. That's, I think, what got Howie Roseman and all the scouts, to rate him as highly as they did. He was their top corner option, the top guy on the draft board. And when he fell to the Eagles, it was just like, man, perfect, because they were rumored to be trading up for him at as high as 14. So really excited about that. Obviously, corner was the biggest need going into this draft, and so many people had mocked corners to the Eagles. It really was just a matter of who are they going to get, and Mitchell is the guy that they're going with. So I love this pick. It's great getting younger on defense and the secondary. So
yeah, Ricardo. I don't know if I mentioned this to you or if I mentioned this. I did a mock draft with Marist College Television that we have here at Marist. And I had in the mock draft, I was picking for the Eagles, and I had them moving up to get Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah.
Because, dude, honestly, I think, and again, I feel like the only knock on him, the only knock that I've really heard on him is the fact that he went to Toledo. I think he might be the best defensive player in the draft when we were going into it on Thursday night. That was kind of the sense that I got. I think you could make an argument about some guys like maybe Dallas Turner or Byron Murphy. But to me, he was the best defensive player in this draft, man. And it was priority number one for the Eagles to address. You mentioned there was guys like Terrion Arnold there. I really like Nate Wiggins a lot, but the fact that they were able to just get Quinyon Mitchell, they had their choice of all the corners at that pick at number 20, man. It's just a perfect scenario. It's a position of need, man. And I think he's going to be starting for Philadelphia almost week 1, honestly. I mean, I don't know how much time he's going to need to really grow into that role, but I mean, it's going to be sooner rather than later that he's going to be lining up on the outside, locking people down for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I would hope so. And I just want to read this line from Len Zerline from NFL.com. He's, quote, built like a running back, tackles like a safety, and has the ball skills of a corner. I'm like, all right, well, that's what I love to hear in a player. Like he's just that skilled, that talented. Like that's something we've needed: athleticism and speed and sure-handed tackling, which was clearly, something the Eagles lacked in the second half of last season. Like, yeah, I mean, again, checks so many boxes, just like the Steelers pick. But yeah, man, it's just our first round picks. I feel like we're just home runs.
Dude, absolute home runs. I'll be honest with you. I was sitting there, I was actually watching the draft, and my mom was like in the living room too, because I went home for a night, and
Yeah.
I was watching it at my home, and she was asking me, well, who do you think the Steelers are going to take here? And I was like, I think it's going to be between three guys. I think it's either going to be Troy Fatano, Graham Barton, who ended up going a little bit later, or Quinyon Mitchell. And I honestly thought, because the Steelers were even rumored to really like Quinyon Mitchell, but they thought he was going to go way earlier in the draft. But, again, I'm really happy they went offensive line, and I'm really happy that Quinyon Mitchell went to the Eagles, because he's definitely a player I'm going to enjoy rooting for and following his career. So really excited to see these two players. I don't know if you have anything more on Quinyon Mitchell, but we can move on to, the next player that the Eagles took. They picked at number 40 in round 2. Did they trade up to 40? They did, right?
Yeah. They traded away their 50th and 53rd pick plus a later pick with the Commanders. And they traded. This is not at all what I was expecting, because after one corner, I was like, all right, we got the need where we're good there. We can fill somewhere else. No, let's just double dip, Howie says. Just like back-to-back rounds. We'll go in and get Cooper DeJean from Iowa. I was like, oh my, I was so blown away by that too, because again, it was just like you already got who you thought was, probably your future. Like, if he doesn't start this, your lockdown corner for the next decade. And then to get Cooper DeJean on top of that, who many projected in the going in the first round.
Yeah, dude. I thought he was going to be in consideration for the Eagles, and obviously the board fell differently, where corners, there was no run on corners early. But if the board had fallen, the wrong way for the Eagles, and Arnold, Wiggins, and Mitchell were all off the board, I thought DeJean would have been in conversation there.
Yeah, I did too. And the fact that he was still on the board this late on, and still in the second round, and the Eagles went up to get him because they loved him that much too. Like, they just figured, why not? And I'm not complaining. I really like the pick too, because he provides versatility. He could, there's questions about where he could play, outside corner, slot corner, maybe even some safety. But that versatility could be huge, because obviously injuries are part of the game. So, he could definitely compete for the slot corner position, because Avonte Maddox hasn't been healthy in recent years. Again, another impact player, another young defender to have in that secondary that can play in any of those positions. Really, I love it. It's just more, more speed, more athleticism. That's exactly what Howie's been harping on the entire offseason. And to get him there is just, it's great.
It's such value. It's such value, man.
Yeah.
And you talk about the athleticism, man. He is extremely athletic. He also has the ability to return. I don't know if he just returns punts or just returns kicks, or if he does both.
Yeah,
but,
I think it's punts.
Potentially that could be something that you look at too. Obviously you've got
Britton Covey we still have,
you guys still do Britton Covey. Okay, I wasn't sure if he was still on the roster or not, but you still have the option of Britton Covey. But it just adds another level that you could potentially consider here, man. And this was kind of what I said to you after the pick happened, is like, dude, a secondary with both Cooper DeJean now and also CJ Gardner-Johnson, who the Eagles brought back, like, they're going to be all over the field. Vic Fangio is going to be able to mix and match, do all sorts of creative things in the secondary. And Ricardo, I ask you, we were talking last year about the weakness of this Eagles secondary, and now all of a sudden, just in really one offseason, you now have Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Reed Blankenship, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Sidney Brown, who was, looked phenomenal at times last year, Keely Ringo, another draft pick from last year on the outside. They did bring Avonte Maddox back. Eli Ricks is still there. Like, this all of a sudden feels like one of the best position groups on the team, the secondary.
Oh, it's definitely the deepest now. And unexpectedly, because again, I expected one corner we were going to draft, but to draft two and bring back Avonte Maddox, it's just, this is a good problem to have, it's something we didn't have last year either. So to have more talent, a bit more depth than last season is going to be huge this coming season.
Yeah, man. Drafting one player when you have a position of need and you draft one player that you feel is really going to help to fill that void, it feels good. When you draft two there, all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is phenomenal. All of a sudden this is becoming an area of strength so much as it was an area of a weakness. And again, the Steelers kind of did that with their round 2 selection, which we'll nicely transition over to. And Zach Frazier, again, double dipping on the offensive line, getting that center of the future. Oh my gosh, I audibly cheered when they picked Zach Frazier at 51 overall, center out of West Virginia, man. I feel like I've talked about him, maybe not on the podcast, but I've been talking about him with all of my friends. I just absolutely love this kid and what he brings to the center position. I say kid, he's the same age as me, but like he graduated high school the same year as us, but
That's
whatever. I still consider myself a kid, definitely at heart too. But to bring him in, man, I loved this pick, dude. And I think, it's just like when you start to reminisce about the great Steelers teams, obviously growing up with Marquise Pouncey being there for years and leading the team, to the Super Bowl run in 2012, which they ultimately fell short of. But he was such a staple there for years of playoff Steelers teams. You talk about guys like Dermontti Dawson, Jeff Hardings, Mike Webster through the years. All these Steeler teams have always been built really from the trenches and more specifically from just having a stud center. And I really hope that Zach Frazier can kind of be that guy. And, from the time I, started researching prospects for the draft, he was the center I wanted out of Jackson Powers Johnson and Graham Barton, who got a lot of talk late. And, there was some talk about some later guys, Cedric Van Pran, Tyler Bortolini. Zach Frazier was the guy that I wanted, and I was so thrilled when they got him. The big talk with him, and it just shows you, like, kind of the heart and the football IQ that he has. But that last play he had at West Virginia where, he unfortunately got hurt, broke his leg on a play. But to realize that the game was under 2 minutes and he couldn't go down and have the medical staff come out because they lose a crucial timeout. He's able to get himself off the field hopping on one leg, man. It just shows you the heart he plays with, man, and I cannot wait to root for this guy. I haven't bought a jersey since this TJ Watt one. I'm buying – actually, this was a gift from my grandma, so never mind. But I haven't gotten a new Steelers jersey since this TJ Watt one. I'm getting a Zach Frazier jersey. You can count on it as soon as they announce his number.
Oh, that is no, dude. Like the way you got your player, the Steelers, like it's just again another home run pick. Again, you're addressing a need, and this guy, just from the stuff I had been reading, just one of the toughest in this year's draft class, just top to bottom, any position you name, he's one of the toughest. And it's just. To me, it's like the Steelers are obviously going to go back to ground and pound, but like, are they really going to go to bread and butter? This guy's also plays with an edge. He also allowed no sacks last season. And he was deemed the second best center. You could argue he's the best center, but in this draft, but still, again, the Steelers didn't have to move up for this. And guy fell right into their lap. Like it was just, again, perfect situation, perfect scenario. It could not have played any better, especially for you since you wanted him so bad.
Yeah, I was sitting there, kind of hoping the Steelers were going to trade up and go get him. And every time a trade would come in, I'd be like, please be the Steelers moving up to get Frazier. Please be the Steelers moving up to get Frazier. And then he fell to him and they made the selection, man, and I was thrilled. Him and Fatano, I watched both of their introductory press conferences this morning. And, Fatano too, absolutely, and Zach Frazier, they both seem like really just down to earth, humble guys. Come from really just good backgrounds and seem like good dudes. So I'm gonna be so excited to be rooting for them. He also has a wrestling background. I think he only lost 2 wrestling matches out of like 150 in high school, which is pretty impressive. But also that's so key for a center to use leverage. Dane Brugler, again, I read him. I read him a lot going up to the draft, and he said, Frazier kind of hit the jackpot because his dad's side was a family of football players. His mom's side was a family of wrestlers. It's a perfect combination for him. And, he also brought up in his press conference the 2 guys he watches a lot of film on that I don't think he actually said he models his game after them, but just 2 guys that he admires a lot and watches a lot of film was Jason Kelsey, actually, which I mean, what center isn't watching Jason Kelsey?
Yeah.
And also Creed Humphrey. So
Oh, yeah.
man,
Wow.
seems like an awesome selection that I am, over the moon excited about, and I cannot wait to get his jersey and watch him play in Pittsburgh.
Oh, I need to see you wearing that jersey whenever
You're
you
gonna
get
see it,
it.
man. You're gonna see it during the season. I may never take it off, dude. I may never take it off. I'm really high that I believe he's gonna be the next great Steelers center, and I've kind of been high on that really since I started doing the draft research. So we will see how it plays out, man. It was definitely a value pick because he kind of fell there, but honestly, the biggest value pick of all might have been the Steelers waiting until round 3. Let me get it. The 84th pick overall. They get Roman Wilson out of Michigan. Position of need wide receiver, a guy some people had going in the second round potentially. Some people had grades on him as high as early second round. He falls all the way towards the end of round 3, and the Steelers get a player that I think he just fits kind of the Steelers football, mindset and sort of like DNA and what they're trying to build there, man. And, he provides kind of some different makeup from what they already have in that room. Obviously, George Pickens being a big down the field threat. Van Jefferson also a bigger receiver. Calvin Austin, more of a speed guy, undersized. And, here they get really kind of a true slot receiver in Roman Wilson, who, also is known for, not being afraid to get after it, blocking in the run game. Yeah. His mantra is actually no block, no rock. So he's going to fit Pittsburgh. He's going to fit this Pittsburgh team like a glove in what they're trying to build with Arthur Smith and the new, the new offensive scheme in there, man. So I'm excited about it. He was the key player for that Michigan, passing attack, which obviously Michigan primarily wanted to run the football. Yeah. So maybe that's why he got slept on a little bit, man. But I think he's going to end up being a really good receiver for this Pittsburgh team, and just really a steal of a pick for Omar Khan and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I mean, man, you guys, again, you didn't have to move up for this either, right? Like, he just failed.
No, he fell. The Steelers didn't make any draft trades. They didn't have to.
Like, again, it's just how? Like, it's just amazing how the Steelers, were just patient and they got, their guys, really. It's just another, just home run after home run after home run, dude. It's just, this is another big need. A dude who ran a 4.39 at the combine. He's a fast dude, and that mantra is so amazing, dude. Like, that would have me running through a brick wall. Like, that's amazing.
Not only did he say that, he also said, now I haven't watched, I don't know if he said this I haven't watched his press conference, but I read in an article that he said at one point after he was drafted by the Steelers, I don't know what kind of an interview it was, but he said, quote, "I'm going to block my ass off." So, like, let's go, man. Like, you're coming in here, like, you're getting a guy who, like, just gets what it means to be a Steeler and what they're trying to do, man. And I think you get a lot of that at Michigan. Like, you don't play for a coach like Jim Harbaugh unless you can buy in to, really putting winning as the priority. And obviously a team that didn't throw the ball a ton. You never heard a peep out of him. There was never any discontent from him. So I think it's great to get him into Pittsburgh here, man. And I love what they're building.
Hey, maybe that's sort of like blocking mentality. That mentality itself can, hopefully spread it in that wide receiver room and make other receivers a lot more willing to block at George Pickens specifically. But, like, that's a great personality, great mindset, great kind of just all around player to have in that room and on that team. Like, that's just, it fits. Yeah. Like a glove, like you said, in that organization, dude.
Yeah. And I think that you bring up, that's a really good point about just that mindset spreading throughout the wide receiver room too, because maybe it was almost the reverse effect of that with Deontay Johnson last year. Like sort of like more of like, I don't want to say like full on diva, but like we talked about this at length last year, the issues that the wide receiver room had with attitude. But George Pickens is a really good blocker at the wide receiver position. And coming out of college, he loved blocking. That's been one of the things he's talked about before. So all of a sudden now you get a guy that, maybe a little bit undersized, maybe he's been doubted at some points in his career in Roman Wilson. And all of a sudden now that sort of just re-energizes the wide receiver room to just kind of get after it, and blocking again, because they're going to be asked to do a lot of that this year. So I love it, man. He's primarily going to be a slot receiver with the team. He, last year in 2023, over the middle, 71.6% of his catches came between the numbers. So that's kind of what he's going to be brought in to do, and I think he's probably going to be the starting slot receiver from day one next year. It wouldn't surprise me. And also, just a fun fact about him: he was the 6th player in Michigan history with a 12 touchdown season catching the football last year for the Wolverines. So again, another pick that I love. This one in the 3rd round, man, can't complain about it. A great value pick for Pittsburgh here.
Yeah, man, another just so good. I mean, I feel like this guy's gonna be a move the sticks kind of guy. This is the guy you give it to on 3rd down. He's just gonna know where he has to be. That's what I'm getting from this. So
yeah. And one of the things that was talked about a lot with him too is his ability to just find spaces in zones over the middle. Man, I think you're 100% right with just that kind of vibe that he's going to bring with the team, almost like a safety valve to a certain degree underneath.
Definitely.
I think it's definitely what we can kind of expect. So let's talk about the next pick that we had here. That would be the Eagles, 94th overall in the 3rd round. Drafting. Excuse me if I say this first name wrong. I haven't even said it out loud before, but Jalen Hunt, I believe is how you say it. I think it's just kind of spelled a little differently. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but
I think it's
edge rusher out of Houston Christian. I'm sorry. How do you say it?
I think it is J-Lix, like as it's
J-Lix. Okay.
I believe so. Yeah, which is a unique name, but this pick. I mean, this very interesting because I believe he used to play safety before he transferred and then became a defensive end. So he's still a very raw prospect, which I mean, also just for context, the Eagles traded down twice to get J-Lix Hunt, which the trade thing will probably, I'll say it at some point later, but for someone who's like a developmental prospect, I would kind of expect that to be drafted and addressed like later on, maybe in like 5th, 4th, 5th round. Like 3rd round to me seemed a little early, but Vic Fangio, according to Daniel Jeremiah, really loved J-Lix Hunt. So, and he thinks that he can develop him and sees the potential of him being a double-digit sack guy eventually. So, I mean, that would be awesome if that were to help. But I mean, the good thing there is, he doesn't have to play right away. You obviously have Bryce Huff, you have Josh Sweat there, Nolan Smith. So it'll be like the 4th, and Brandon Graham, obviously. So it'll be interesting to see how much he even plays. It'll probably be more special teams to start, but I'm hopeful that Fangio can, develop him and get him to a spot where he can maybe contribute at some point this season. But again, Howie Roseman kind of going back to his roots of addressing, the trenches. So I like this as a depth piece, and this is obviously more of a long-term view on it. But I mean, it certainly grew on me. The moment it happened, I kind of was like, all right, like that's an interesting one, but I think it's grown on me a little bit since.
Well, let me give you a now again, I have no idea how these guys, their actual playing style compares when they were both coming out of college. But let me give you a little daydream comparison for maybe how he can develop over the next 2 to 3 seasons. Off the top of my head, I can think of another guy who was drafted recently in the 3rd round, went to a small school. I mean, what school did this guy go to? Houston Christian. Houston Christian. So I can think of a guy drafted in the 3rd round as a developmental pass rusher, went to a small school like Houston Christian, and has since become a double-digit sack guy who also got a massive contract extension. Do you know who I'm thinking of?
Are we talking about the guy behind you? Or no?
No. The guy that lines up opposite him. Alex Highsmith, dude.
Highsmith. Okay,
3rd round pick, went to Charlotte. Charlotte. and
I didn't know that.
10 sacks 2 years ago. So I mean, like, dude, if you can take this guy, again, like you said, Howie Roseman built through the trenches, and in 2 to 3 years, he's getting opportunities on the outside. And who knows how that development can go, but Brandon Graham's not going to be around forever. Josh Sweat, I guess Josh Sweat's still on the younger side too, but and you've obviously got Nolan Smith there, but you want, multiple options at that edge rusher position. And definitely special teams to start. I think Alex Highsmith started on special teams himself, but down the road, definitely a developmental piece that you could get excited about.
I did not know he went to Charlotte. I'll be honest there. Like, I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
I thought he went to some bigger school, but,
No, no, he went
yeah,
to Charlotte. I distinctly remember that. I had to look it up what school it was. I thought it was Chattanooga, but I remembered it
yeah.
being a smaller school that started with the letter C. Um, but yeah, man. I mean, if it can work out like that, I mean, I think that'd be a dream scenario for the Eagles.
That would be amazing, dude. But yeah, that's again, that's more of a future sort of looking down the road sort of thing, which I'm totally cool with because again, he doesn't need to play right away, so he'll learn from some of these the experienced guys. So I'm cool with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go to the last pick that our two teams had in the first three rounds, and that would be 98th overall. I want to get the number right. 98th overall, Peyton Wilson, inside linebacker out of NC State. Again, it just feels like a value pick here that the
Yeah,
Steelers wanted to go after, because Peyton Wilson was a guy that, people were talking about him maybe as early as a third round pick, maybe late second round, but I think third round, early fourth was where he was really getting talked about. He goes at the end of the fourth round, and the Steelers just get, a I don't want to say it's like a depth piece necessarily, because I think he's going to get opportunities in that inside linebacker room. You
yeah,
know, you obviously brought in the big free agent Patrick Queen, and I love a Landon Roberts, but there's only so much that he can do from a coverage sense, that I think, and you obviously, it's completely up in the air, how Cole Holcomb is going to kind of come back from that major knee injury. So
yeah,
I like adding the depth to the inside linebacker room. And I think you do it at a spot where you're still getting a very talented player, 138 tackles, 17 and a half tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, and was a unanimous All-American last season, in his 6th year at NC State. So, I like the pick. He's got a long injury history. That's really the only concern with him. Double-digit surgeries since his senior year of high school. So the guy's been under the needle a lot. You don't know how that's going to translate, but I also remember a couple years ago, Drew Tranquil coming out of Notre Dame, and he had a slew of injuries. And when he's been on the field in the NFL, he's been a really talented inside linebacker. So, the injuries are a concern, but you take a chance in the fourth round or in the third round on a guy who could end up being a really talented player at the next level.
yeah. I mean, from the things I've read, like he has first round talent, so to speak. It's just
Yeah,
the injury part of it really made him slide. There's always that one player that just slides like crazy because of some reason, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think this. What was it? I read something where he doesn't have one of his ACLs, which
Yeah,
is
so I heard
incredible.
that. I haven't read anything about it yet. I know it's something that I don't know if I've seen it or I've heard it on Twitter or whatnot, but I haven't actually read into it enough to know for sure. But I mean, yeah, man, that's the concern. Double digit surgery since his senior year, like I said, and I had it pulled up here a second ago. But I think, yeah, he tore his ACL his senior year of high school, and then since then he's had shoulder surgery. He's re-injured his same right knee, when he was in college. Really, I mean, he's had, shoulder issues, concussion issues, shoulder issues again. Every year he's kind of dealt with an injury, except for this senior year, which he
Yeah,
just kind of went off, and he won the Butkus Award, which is given to
yeah,
the top FBS linebacker. So phenomenal last year of college. It's just he's got to stay on the field, frankly.
yeah. No, my point was going to be that the fact that he put up all those stats without an ACL is kind of insane.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know how that's even possible, but yeah, like
yeah.
this,
How do you walk without an ACL, let alone have
that's
138 tackles at the
that's what I'm
in the
saying.
ACC? Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
this to me is also like this dude must just be tough as nail. I mean, it seems like he's gone through a lot.
Well,
So
that's one of the things I like the most about him is he's known as kind of only playing with one speed, which a lot of his coaches talk about. Known as a very good tackler, which obviously you see that in this last year of college. He's also kind of underrated in pass coverage too. Like I think he's going to be able to cover tight ends and running backs at the next level, which is definitely a plus. And he's also got experience on special teams. So best case scenario, we get, Patrick Queen playing alongside Cole Holcomb, earlier rather than later. And, he just kind of makes a name for himself on special teams to start. But, again, I'm going to quote Dane Brugler again. He quoted him and says, he plays with an every play could be my last mentality mindset. So, you just love to see that out of inside linebackers. And I don't know. I'm very excited about it. The one other thing I wanted to bring up, which I read, which I mean, it's kind of a concern, but he did have an arrest back his sophomore year, which like, look, I get it. You're a sophomore in college, you do dumb stuff, but I'm trying to look it up. But he was arrested on misdemeanor counts of consuming alcohol, possession of a fake ID, injury to personal property, resisting an officer, after he ran from police and was struck by a vehicle and hit under a car. So,
Oh God.
I don't know. Again, I mean, that's bad. Like I said, we all do dumb stuff when we're sophomores in college, but that's a lot of stuff, and that's a lot to chalk up to one bad night your sophomore year.
I mean, yeah, but like at the same time, it's almost like it could be worse, I guess. Like that's not the worst thing possible.
I mean, we're not sitting here talking about repeat instances like a Johnny Manziel.
Yeah,
and again, we've seen this before with players like Baker Mayfield. I mean, I think he was arrested once or twice in college, but again, not like a repeat offender, so to speak. And like, it ended up being fine. I mean, I don't know if he was ever arrested, but I remember there being some like questions about like Micah Parsons' characters coming out, and like he was like a super sort of like, again, I don't want to misquote it if he wasn't actually arrested, but like we've seen it before where like you can have a one-off instance and kind of get past it. So, I don't know. It was just interesting that I read that. And it was like, at first I was reading it like, all right, like arrested on account of like, public intoxication or whatever it was, having a fake ID, like not the worst thing. And then it was like, oh, he hit under a car and ran from police. So like that takes it a little bit further. But again, that was the only instance. So I don't really, again, don't want to go too far on it. It was, a long time ago. He's 24 now. That happened his sophomore year. Yeah. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much, but felt like I still had to kind of bring it up because, again, maybe it was just one bad night out, but
it might have been. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
so
that's valid.
That brings us through all the picks that both of our teams had in the first 3 rounds. Ricardo, the Eagles also selecting the rest of the draft: Will Shipley, Ainias Smith, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Trevor Keegan, Johnny Wilson, and Dylan McMahon in the remaining rounds. I'm going to kind of let you take it if you want to talk about anything overarching, or if there's maybe one player of that bunch that you want to bring up and talk about at all, but kind of anything you kind of took away from the rest of the draft. And yeah, let's just kind of start with there for the Eagles.
So I guess I'll just start off with the obvious of Jeremiah Trotter Jr., just that story itself. Obviously his father played with the Eagles, and just, I don't know if you've watched this, but like the phone call he had with Jeffrey Lurie, the emotion that Lurie was showing, he was like, something along the lines of like, "Oh, hey, how old were you when I first met you?" Like that kind of moment. Like you should watch it. It's an awesome video.
I actually want to watch that now. That sounds awesome. I haven't seen that yet. I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like that. So obviously had to highlight that. I mean, he's a linebacker, and just like his dad was, and the expectations shouldn't be anywhere near as high. On like, I don't think he's going to be anywhere near as good as his dad was, but still, like he can contribute. Definitely be a special teamer, and you never know, he could end up being a rotational guy in that linebacker room because Nakobe Dean seemingly can't stay on the field. Devin White's only here on a 1-year deal, so
yeah,
you never know. There's opportunity there, but again, for this season, I'm not expecting very much, and the story itself is cool, and just had to highlight that, but.
I think it makes sense because it's like, this is kind of like the Steelers drafting Peyton Wilson. Like both teams addressed inside linebacker in free agency with bringing in Devin White and Patrick Queen, but it's good to just throw some extra depth in there. And the Eagles do that with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And like you said, at the very least, he will get opportunities on special teams.
Yeah, and I guess for the rest of the drafts, I mean, 2 receivers and a running back. Hopefully one of those 2 receivers in Ainias or who's the other one? It was just Johnny Wilson. Maybe
Johnny Wilson, yeah.
Hopefully one of them can contribute sooner rather than later, because wide receiver 3 is definitely still up in the air. And I mean, the competition will be, I mean, it's there. It's there for the taking, essentially. So
yeah,
obviously very different players. Johnny Wilson, 6'6", more of a jump ball and big play guy. Ainias, I think is how you say his name. Yeah, Ainias. He's more of like a gadget player, so you could
Yeah.
really like have fun with it, and put him across formation, maybe do some end arounds, some like gadget plays, of that nature. So hopefully that opens up Kellen Moore's playbook a little more. Trying figuring out a way to use him, but running
Yeah.
back wise, I don't expect Will Shipley to do very much this season because obviously Saquon's there. Kenny Gainwell still there. But he is the third running back. So you never know. He could
Yeah.
make an appearance or like have a few snaps here and there. But then the other two are offensive linemen, which had to be addressed at some point. Like it was gonna be depth pieces at the very least. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much what these two guys are. So and Jeff Stoutland, the best offensive line coach. So these guys could end up being, I don't know, at least maybe a starter one day because that's just how good Jeff Stoutland is at developing offensive linemen. So but I hope they don't see the field. I'm just fingers
Yeah.
crossed for that. But
No,
again,
absolutely.
solid overall.
Well, I feel like you should also bring up here. I mean, under the radar too. I don't know how you feel about this, but like yes, two depth pieces for the offensive line, and eventually bigger picture down the road, they're going to have to look to get a replacement for Lane Johnson in the draft early on.
Right.
But that's fine. But also Mekhi Becton brought in. You make anything of that, or just a guy to compete in camp for a backup spot?
I mean, if you're going to give him as much as $5 million, I think he can earn up to $5.5 million.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be the top swing tackle. And again, Jeff Stoutland, I'm confident that he can at least get him to a spot where he can be that swing tackle if needed. And he was a first round pick. So like,
I mean, his issue has always been his ability
injuries.
or inability, I guess, to stay on the field. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just, and since he won't really be starting or playing very much this season, the hope is if one of our guys were to go down, he can just slot in there and, just do a solid job. So this dude's a mountain also. Like
I think he needed a change of scenery, man. He was getting into it a little bit with the New York media last summer too. So it's like I think it was just and like there was issues with him coming in overweight and stuff like that. He needed to get out of New York. So fresh start for him, and he's gonna be able to try to earn his way as being a swing tackle, like you said.
Yeah, that should be good enough for him.
So I guess the next question I kind of have, what would you give this roster's or this draft's overall grade, excuse me?
Ooh,
if you even want to do that.
Yeah, I give it a B plus. I don't want to give it an A. The reason I don't give it an A minus or an A is because I feel like the offensive tackle specifically could have been addressed sooner.
Okay.
And I mean,
it wasn't really addressed at all in the draft.
Yeah, that's
like tackle specifically.
Yeah, like for Lane Johnson's, but again, it's like he's not retiring before the season, so it's really not a big deal. And but also the fact that Howie Roseman got 3 draft picks for next year's draft, which I mean, from the 9 trades he made, which is insane. That's the most, I think, tied for most in any NFL draft. So that, I mean, the wheeling and dealing, I mean, he's just toying with GMs. I mean, getting 3 third rounder, a 4th, and a 5th for next year is kind of insane.
But dude, he wheels and deals better than any GM when it comes to the draft. When it comes to like the 3 days of the draft specifically and just maneuvering picks, nobody does it better.
Yeah, I love that about him. He also just loves trade. At first, I was like, he may be getting a bit trade happy, but when he got those 3 future picks, I was like, all right, I like it because you're still getting players that'll make an impact this coming season, but also thinking about the future. So, it works both ways. So,
yeah. Well, I'll move over to the Steelers now and kind of what they did in the rest of the draft. In round 4, they added some depth at guard with Mason McCormick, which may have been a little bit surprising there because, already using 2 picks on the O-line, maybe they could have gone to the secondary there. But I don't hate it, man, because, again, like I mentioned earlier, Daniels and Herbig are going to be free agents on the O-line next year. You add a guard, at the very least, he can be a backup piece, a depth piece. And, if he develops into a starter down the road, that's great. And I think it's very important to just, stockpile as many kind of guys on that offensive line as you can. So I really didn't hate the pick. Then, you had to go to the 6th round for their next pick where they, beefed up the defensive line with Logan Lee from Iowa. He grew up a Steelers fan. He
Love
said,
that.
quote, he loved watching Mel Blount slam people on their heads. So maybe that tells you a little bit about that. And then they also added Ryan Watts, the third out of Texas, to the corner. Finally, kind of a late round corner pick like they did last year with Corey Trice Jr. So, just, adding to more kind of positions of need and some guys that, I think they liked a lot. Overall, I really loved this draft, man. I loved the Steelers draft last year, and I think I liked this one even more. I just also want to read this quote or this tweet from Alex Kozora that he wrote. This is, again, talking about the guys in the first 3 rounds, but his tweet was, Troy Fautano grew up a Steelers fan. Zach Frazier does woodworking, making desks for his wife, and was at Big Ben's last home game. Roman Wilson's mantra is no block, no rock. And Peyton Wilson grew up on a farm. That's peak Steelers draft class right there. So
it is, yeah.
I mean, it's like I just absolutely love everything. I'm already becoming a fan of all these guys and just continuing to learn more and more about them and their playing style and their personalities off the field, man. I love it, and I think that, adding depth to the defensive line, adding depth to the secondary, and adding depth to the O-line in those later picks was also a plus, man. So I absolutely love this class from Pittsburgh.
What would you say your grade is for it if you have one?
A.
Yeah.
Hands down. I mean, the only reason not to give it an A+ is that they didn't really address corner sooner, which I think is still a need. And really, it's a need in the sense of, like, if Joey Porter Jr. gets hurt, then I think you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
But again, the reason that I don't really dock it is the fact it's like, well, what guy would I be comfortable with? Like, I'm not going to say, oh, they should have addressed a corner and not drafted Roman Wilson. They should have addressed corner and not drafted Peyton Wilson, because I like all these guys. I'm really happy we picked them. Yeah. I guess maybe the 4th round with Mason McCormick is the only guy I'd be like, yeah, if you had taken a corner there versus adding depth at guard, that's fine. But I don't have a problem with adding depth at guard. So I give it an A. Had they taken a corner earlier, maybe it's an A+, but I don't know, man. I really, really like this class. And I'm really excited to see how it kind of pans out. So
Did I lose connection or did you? Stand by. Oh, cool. Looks like it's just me. I wonder if he'll come back. I think his Wi-Fi cut out, but yeah, I mean, overall, just home run picks for the Steelers. I mean, the Eagles did a very good job too addressing needs and thinking long term as well. So yeah, I would say just for our class, it's very good. Oh.
Hey man, I think I'm back.
Yeah, I think you're back. Yeah.
Not sure what happened there, man. But yeah, my Wi-Fi just completely went out. So we'll try and close this up on my hotspot on my phone. I only have 1 bar of LTE where I am in my house right now, but we'll give it a shot. And if the connection gets bad, luckily, I think we've talked about pretty much everything we need to here. But yeah, man, I love this draft class, and I think you're extremely happy with what the Eagles did as well. Let me ask you this. This is kind of where I was going to go next. Are there any kind of remaining needs you want the Eagles to address before training camp, I guess, or really before we kind of start to get into the off-season programs here? I mean, obviously we're going to get into, rookie mini camps, OTAs, all that kind of good stuff. But is there anything that you would kind of like to see the Eagles do post-draft before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of, kind of the off-season camps?
I would probably say get another safety, at least bring some other, and maybe even another tight end too, because Dallas Goedert, I think he's a free agent after this year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that bringing another body and those two. But other than that, I think you're good. I think you've got the players you need, and yeah, just let them, the rookies and all the other players, just battle it out for a roster spot, and you know how that goes. But how about you? How do you feel about the Steelers, and what do you think, if anything, they could, I guess, address?
I feel good. I honestly, the biggest thing I want them to do is bring back Patrick Peterson, who's still out there as a free agent right now. Multiple reasons. I'm not saying bring him in to be, a depth guy at, outside corner. I think his days as an outside cornerback are over, but you still don't really have a true slot receiver on this roster right now. I guess right now by default it would kind of be Darius Rush, who looked, solid at points last year. Don't get me wrong, I like Darius Rush, but I think you could bring in Pat Pete to compete for the slot corner spot. You got me back, Ricardo?
Yeah. I heard
the
part about you should bring it back. Yeah, do you hear me?
Okay. So, yeah, I got you.
Okay.
We're experiencing tough technical difficulties. All right. I think we're both back.
I think so.
I got you. I got you on my end, Ricardo.
Okay, I also have you. You're just delayed. Your video's delayed, but yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I think this should just about be the point that we wrap things up here. If you still have me here, obviously I'm going through it right now on my hotspot, and just to keep having it cut in and out. We could talk about the roster, in other episodes, but we got everything we need to get into regarding the draft. So I'll ask you now, any final thoughts as we, wrap this up with our best sort of technical. Here we go. Here, this is a tough ending to a great show, but we're making it work. Any final thoughts?
No, man. I mean, you're just great overall for our teams.
Great overall for our teams. There'll be plenty more to talk about as we continue to get into it, and we'll have future episodes that we can talk about it even more. So until then, everybody, thank you. It's been a blast talking about this, Ricardo, man. I'm hyped up. Go Steelers, go Eagles, go Knicks, Ricardo.
Shut up.
All right. Peace out, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.